movie, Just Mercy. And it's all about making sure that we are interceding on behalf of our brothers and sisters locked up. So I know most of you, when you come in, you're used to getting the word for yourself. But today we're going to talk about this word, about what we can do to help those incarcerated. And Represent Justice is a movement all about making sure that there is fair treatment, that there are the right laws to protect those that are incarcerated, and also to make sure that those that are incarcerated unjustly get the justice that is available for them. So as you're coming in today, we have a dynamic conversation. It's going to be me. And if you don't know Topeka Sam, let me tell you right now, you are in for a treat. She is amazing and going to blow you away. I thought we would just start the session this morning. You can hear it in the background, a little Kanye West, little Sunday service, ultralight beam. I don't know about you, but this is a moment when we just got to take our focus off of ourselves. We got to put it higher. We got to put it higher. And I do believe when we intercede on behalf of others, when we go beyond our own circumstance, we begin to really see what God wants to do. I see you. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for all the birthday wishes. I appreciate that. But I'm excited today to talk about Represent Justice. And let me tell you something. If you need justice today in any area of your life, now is the time. What better way to need justice than to help others find justice in their life? And I think it's really, really important. For me, many of you don't know about my story. I've spent a lot of time ministering at CIW, which is California Institute for Women. And let me tell you, if you've never been to a prison, if you've never seen people that you love locked up, let me tell you, it does something to you. It does something to your heart. And so it was a blessing over the years. I've been able to partner with Touch of Love Ministries, and I've gone indoors. I've gone behind the walls and been able to minister. And let me tell you something. A lot of times, we forget those that are incarcerated. But I can tell you my experience being there, it changed my life, because to see these women who were in, there for a variety of reasons. Let me tell you something, to see their hunger for God, to see their hunger for justice, to see their hunger for a better day. What blew me away is a lot of times we take these freedoms for granted. But I want you to know, if you have come into this live today, I don't want you to take it for granted. And I can tell you, ministering at CIW, has really, really changed me. And I'll also talk about some areas in my family, which I'll share a little bit later on, which many of you may not know. So I just want us today to spend time, interceding for those who may not be able to intercede for themselves. And do me a favor. If you've ever needed a second chance, go ahead and put the prayer hands in the comments. You ever needed a second chance? Have you ever needed a second chance? Go ahead and put the prayer hands in the comments. And I'm putting my prayer hands in the comments, because let me tell you something. I'm so thankful. Oh, there we go. I'm so thankful that I've had more than one chance in this life to get it right. Go ahead and put the prayer hands in the comments if you ever needed a second chance. You may need a second chance right now. Go ahead and put the prayer hands in the comments. Be thankful. Be thankful. Come on. I see you, Christopher. I see you, Stephanie. Anybody ever needed a second chance? Anybody so grateful that you got a second chance? Come on. Who am I talking to right now? Seriously, have you ever made a mistake and God gave you a chance to get it right? Go ahead and put the prayer hands in right now. Please, please. It's so important, because too often we forget that we've been given third and fourth and fifth chances. And there's a lot of people locked up who have not been given a fair chance for a second chance. So if you've ever needed a second chance, do me a favor. Go ahead and put those prayer hands. Come on. Come on. I see you. I see you. I see you. I see you. I see you all over the world. So important. I also have a word for you, but I'm going to give you the word at the very end. I've got a word for you. I'm going to give it to you at the very end. So important. I want you to stay tuned through this whole session. It's really important that we begin, especially during this COVID time, to do what we can do to help our brothers and sisters that are locked up. I see everybody. I see you, Carolina. I see you, S. Lewis. Yes, we put in the prayer hands, because we need a second chance. Oh, my goodness. I'm grateful that I've been given a second chance in my life. And I'll be honest with you. I am committed absolutely committed to helping as many people as I can get a second chance in life as I possibly can. So important. I see you. I see you all around the world. I see you. Yes, yes, yes. I see you, Pastor Kelly. You ran out of second chances a minute ago. You needed another chance. There it is. I'm with you. Thank God for another chance, because most of us, we blurred out the second chance. I love that, Pastor Kelly. We need another chance, another chance. Put the prayer hands in the comments if you need another chance to get it right. If you've ever made a mistake and you need another chance to get it right, go ahead and put the prayer hands in the comments. Now, I want to introduce to you and some reintroduce to you. I want to bring in Topeka Sam. She's unbelievable, a dynamic woman. I want her to be able to introduce herself to you in the ministry that she runs and all that she's doing to make this world a better place. And also, I want her to talk about her role at Represent Justice. Let me tell you something. This is a movement. Represent Justice is a movement. And I want everybody to become aware of the movement today. So I'm going to invite our guest today, Topeka K Sam, into the chat. Hey, there she is.
Hey, got my prayer hands
Got your
up
prayer
too.
hands, right? I got mine too.
Yes, praise God. Thank you so much for that great introduction. But I was feeling the music. So
Yeah,
shout
right?
outs to Sunday sermon because that was definitely necessary on these days and in these trying times. But we at Represent Justice appreciate you so much. God bless you. And before I even start, happy birthday to you. I'm going to
Thank
chime
you.
in. I didn't want to do a little tag and tweet yesterday. I said I would have the opportunity to talk to you head on. And
Oh,
so,
thank you for that. I
praise God for your
appreciate you.
life. God bless you for another journey around the sun, the moon, the world, whatever people
Yes.
say. But thank you so much.
It's my honor. It's my pleasure. Thank you. I'm blessed to see another year. I feel like getting to another year is the equivalent of getting
That's right.
another chance to get it right. So I'm grateful. Thank you so much for the birthday wishes. It's an honor to
Absolutely.
talk with you. For those that don't know you, just give the people watching right now all over the world,
Mm,
give them an idea. Just tell them who you are, the ministries that you run, and your role with Represent Justice.
absolutely. So first, praise God,
Yes.
from whom all blessings flow. And so, as I was listening in before we came in, I thought about when I came home from prison and I went to Abyssinia Baptist Church. That's my father's church. He just passed
Mm.
away in January, where he was a
Oh,
minister and a deacon
man,
there.
rest in peace.
But Reverend Dr. Calvin Butt said to me, "You have a ministry, Ladies of Hope Ministries. Did you go to seminary school?" I said, well, Reverend Butt, ministry is in the church, but it's also outside of the church, right? And so it's how we do our work. However, I did go back to seminary school when I came home, but through my experience, just a little bit about myself, I am not what they call the typical journey that would have went to prison.
Okay.
I grew up with a two-parent home. Both of my parents were together to my father's passing this year, 56 years.
Mm.
I was blessed. We had everything. My parents were franchise business owners, and they were restaurateurs. So I had classically trained in piano, dance. I played piano actually in church,
Oh, wow.
to start. And then I was trained. I mean, had every single thing, captain of every team, everything. We were raised in Long Island, where we were the only Black family in our neighborhood.
Mm.
So when I wanted to go to college, I chose an HBCU. And I went to Morgan State University in Baltimore. And getting there, everything was different. You come from white suburbia to the city. And like most kids, when you don't have, I guess, a parent telling you what to do, you decide to kind of spread out and spread your wings. And that's what I did. I started going off campus, started dating guys who were hustling, selling drugs, eventually found myself selling drugs,
Hmm.
which land through a lifestyle and a journey that ultimately in my 30s landed me in federal prison on a drug conspiracy charge. And when I got there, I went in as a privileged woman. I had friends, mentors, my parents, my brothers, people who traveled all the way to Virginia, where I was actually detained at. And there, I always thought people who use drugs because they wanted to. And it wasn't until I started talking to the sisters who were there and asking them why they used drugs, and hearing the stories of the pain and the trauma. One woman said that she was raped by her dad, and he gave her heroin and told her to take the heroin and the pain would go away. And so that's how she began with her substance misuse journey. Another woman said the only time she was able to spend time with her mother is when they smoked crack together. And so it was these stories, and that spiritually convicted me. And I realized the damage that I had done and what I had ultimately created to the harm of people, my community, women. And so I pled
And Topeka,
guilty.
can I interject right there?
Yeah.
Because I'm curious, when you rewind the tape of your life and you go back to the moment when you decided to start selling, was that more recreational? Was it just the lifestyle you were in, or were there some things that were happening in your life prior to that that may have made you be more susceptible or more open to it? Because there may be some people watching now who are in that same situation that you were, and they're about to make a decision that can take them down a path that maybe your story could, prevent them from going down.
Absolutely. And thank you. I already, no one has ever asked me that question. So I'm grateful for God's intervention there. But yeah, so I struggled with a sense of connectedness and belonging within my own community. And that's the truth. The truth is that because I grew up in a white neighborhood and I end up going to a HBCU, and though they were beautiful, Black, brilliant people, there was often when I was told that I talked like I was white, or I was pretty to be dark skinned, or, guys would say, oh, I usually don't date dark skinned girls, but you're cute. So, it was these things. And I didn't really understand about colorism. I didn't understand about the things that happens within our communities. And so I found myself trying to belong. And in doing that, I started dating types of guys. And instead of repping where I was from, which was Long Island, I laugh. I would say, yeah, because my parents had a place in Harlem and their businesses were in the city. So I was from Harlem. And it was this way for me to feel that I could be connected and accepted. And so in that, or through that journey, that's how I know it was a lack of self-love, a lack of really understanding that God made me great for who I was and why I was the way I was. And instead of necessarily trying to integrate into what I thought Blackness was, which ultimately was a narrative that was false, that had been created against us. For us to begin and to think that these are the ways that we're supposed to operate within our communities and society. And I bought into that narrative, being young and naive and really not understanding.
I see. Got it. That's really, really important, because I think a lot of times, why I wanted to unpack that question is because it's very easy, to the point you were making about once you got, in there and you began to hear different stories, you began to have a better understanding. And I think a lot of times we look at those who have been incarcerated or are currently incarcerated, and we don't always see ourselves.
That's
We
right.
all struggle with belonging. We
That's
all
right.
struggle with trying to find our place. And but for the grace of God, any of us at any given point in time could have made a decision that could have gone another way. So I really appreciate you sharing your part of that part of your story, so that those
No, thank
listening,
you.
and there's a lot of people, saying great testimony and that they're relating to it. So going back to the point when you were there and you began to realize all these different stories, talk about the transformation that happened in your life while you
Absolutely.
were incarcerated.
Absolutely. So as I said, I was raised in a church, so I always knew who God was. When was in the county jail, I was in a cell for 21 to 23 hours a day. I was separated from what was considered state or county detainees because it was a federal charge. So I was alone. And so I picked up the Bible. And the first verse that my eyes looked to was Romans 8:28. And all things God does good for those who love God, who are called according to
Yes.
their purpose.
Yes.
And in that, I was like, okay, God, what do you want from me? Like, what am I supposed to learn through this journey? And my dad sent me in his favorite scripture, which was Proverbs 3:5-6. Right? Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will direct
He
your
will
path.
direct your path. Amen.
Absolutely. So through that is when I said, well, you know what? I had friends and family that could have necessarily helped to get resources in for me to get additional counsel and things like that. But I said, you know, God had given me up until that point several chances. That wasn't my first run-in with the criminal legal system. It was the first time I was actually incarcerated and detained. And so I said, you know, you have to take levels of responsibility. Again, reading and studying the Bible, and, you know, thinking about now Romans 12:1 about the renewing of your mind, and understanding that there's ways that we have to accept personal responsibility in our journey for transformation. And so that was part of what I needed to do. Now, I was sentenced. I pled guilty because I was. And that was for me, part of my redemption and retribution that I needed to do. I had mentors, Reverend Dr. Eleanor Moody Shepherd, who's also my board chair of my organization, who ministered to me and who helped me prepare me spiritually through that journey. And I was originally sentenced to 10 years, 10 months. And I was like, okay, God, you know, I know you said you're going to give me a sit down, but
10 years and 10 months. That's a long sit down, Lord.
Bottom line. So I'm like, this is wait, I know you have something that I need to learn. Because my mom always says that I was the child who, if somebody said, Topeka, don't touch that, it's hot, I would touch it anyway. And then I try with the right hand, and then I try with my elbow, and I'm just trying to see if there are other ways. So I was like, okay, God's got to show me something through this journey. And so I started off the journey. And when I went through, whether it was the county jail, where it was relatively poor, Black, white women, brown women, struggling with different issues, substance misuse, being criminalized for poverty. Then I went to federal prison, where there were women who were educated, master's degrees. I was incarcerated with doctors, lawyers, judges, senators.
Wait. You got to repeat that for those in the back. Repeat that, because again, we have these myths that we've made up about those that are incarcerated that are not true. So repeat that, please.
Absolutely. So in the federal system, there were women with different types of level of education background: doctors, judges, lawyers, senators, educators, people with, you know, so you think about the levels of education, you think about the backgrounds that they've come from, but there was this underlying trauma that women had, right? Sexual abuse or violence. Over 85% of women who have been incarcerated reported are survivors of sexual trauma or violence. And we do know that that number is low because so often women are still shamed of the things that they've been through. Then it's substance misuse. It's verbal and mental abuse. It's mental health issues. It's all of these things. So it was irrespective to whether they were poor or whether they were wealthy. It were the underlying issues that prison, and then they were taking and kidnapping the mothers. And so now you have people who are incarcerated. Women today have been incarcerated 800% increase over the last 2 decades. They're being sentenced double the rate of men to life while incarcerated today. That's happening. And then when women come home, there's no resources. And so what I realized through my journey, through 5 different prisons and jails throughout the country, that women were saying the same thing. They were in fear to come home, not having somewhere to go to. Either their husband sent them divorce papers while they were in there and they didn't have a home to go to. Either they felt they would be survivors or victims, of the drug trafficking or sex trafficking. They would be, you know, just put in all of these situations. And so I told my lawyer.
Oh, wow, this is good. Topeka, when you come back in, your reception is messed up. I want you just to back up. This is good. Your testimony is so powerful.
Topeka, you there? It stopped out for a minute. I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it froze for a minute. So yeah, just rewind the tape just a little bit and catch us up just a moment. When you said when you were talking to the judge.
Right. So I told my lawyer that I wanted to write a letter to the judge because I knew God was not having me in there for that long. And he was like, you can do what you want. They call him Hang 'em High Hudson. So, you know, we'll see. But you could do it. So I write a letter to the judge, explaining about my transformation. And this was in 2013. I've been in at this point about a year in my sentence. So in 2014 in March, right before my birthday, the day, actually March 5th, my birthday is March 6th, I get a letter. saying that the judge actually cut my sentence from 130 months to 65 months. And I was like, okay, so now I go from 10 years and 10 months to
Yeah.
5 years and 5 months.
Okay.
So I'm like, all right, God, you're working. So what's next? So then I get a call saying that I'm qualified for this drug program. So I'm like, all right, I don't have any drug use or misuse in my history, but great, because it was the only program in the federal system that allows you to get a year off your sentence. So I was like, okay, I'm there, so I transfer to Illinois. I complete the program. So a year is taken off my sentence.
Come on.
And then I get called into the office and a law passed, all drugs -2, that I qualified off, got 15 months off my sentence. And they told me I was going home in 2 weeks. So
in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
And you only had served how much time up to that point?
At this point, I served 3 years.
Wow. 30% of the original sentence.
Of the original sentence. So I knew that God had an anointing and a calling on my life. I knew that everything that God told me I needed to do, that I had to do, because if not, I would not be sitting here in front of you, right? My original out date for my sentence was September 30th, 2021. So while I sit here right now and having been able to achieve all of the great things to help women and girls over the last 5 years, I know that is by the grace and glory of God. And so that's how I lead and live my life. And that's how the organization was birthed. So it was birthed out of incarceration.
Talk about that. Yeah, I want to talk about the organization that was birthed. For those of you that are watching, if you have questions and comments, please go ahead in the comments, write your questions. We'll get to as many of them as we can. I know if you're like me, you're being moved by Topeka's testimony. We're so grateful that you would be so transparent to share it. So thank you for that. But that's the next question, which is talk about the ministry you started. And here is one of the things I'm also very interested in, which is a lot of time there's a pull for those that make it out of the system, there's a pull back into the system. Mm-hmm. How did you resist the pull? And what role did your ministry play in keeping you focused on the purpose that God had for you post-incarceration?
Absolutely. So the pull, I'll start there and then I'll work back. Yes, there's always going to be negativity around. There's always going to be things that reminiscent of an old life or a past. There might be certain music that you play that takes you back to that club night. It might be certain things that you do, something that you might sip on that's like, wait a minute, I remember, I don't need to be drinking this. So it's like all of those things. But I also know that because God had placed me to do this work, it is what also keeps me safe. So it's selfishness to it also, because it allows me to remember, like never forget. Because it's easy. There's many people who come home from prison, and you should want to forget that experience. It is traumatic. It's not healing. It is dark, and it does nothing as it relates to renewing your spirit and your mind at all. I don't believe that anyone should be in prison, but I definitely say that women and girls should never, ever go to jail. There's alternatives to incarceration. There are programs that we have out here that can make communities whole and people whole again. And so through that is why I do this work. But my organization, and I want to lead on to why I rep justice. The organization, the Ladies of Hope Ministries, we approach our work through 3 buckets. So it's direct service and sustainability, empowerment and edification, and policy and advocacy.
Nice.
So the way that and every single program that has been created through my personal experience. And so we have an organization that every single person who's in the organization has been impacted by incarceration, the staff of 8, and all of our consultants and contractors, because I believe that you have to be informed in order to do the work. What I heard you say before is if you've never been to prison, you need to go into a prison. And so when you're doing work around this, you need to actually live and do this work. And so we start there and then I'll work back. Yes, there's always going to be negativity around. There's always going to be things that reminiscent of an old life or a past. There might be certain music that you play that takes you back to that club night. It might be certain things that you do, something that you might sip on that's like, wait a minute, I remember, I don't need to be drinking this. So it's like all of those things. But I also know that because God had placed me to do this work, it is what also keeps me safe. So it's selfishness to it also, because it allows me to remember, like never forget. because it's easy. There's many people who come home from prison, and you should want to forget that experience. It is traumatic. It's not healing. It is dark, and it does nothing as it relates to renewing your spirit and your mind at all. I don't believe that anyone should be in prison, but I definitely say that women and girls should never, ever go to jail. There's alternatives to incarceration. There are programs that we have out here that can make communities whole and people whole again. And so through that is why I do this work. But my organization, and I want to lead on to why I rep justice. The organization, the Ladies of Hope Ministries, we approach our work through 3 buckets. So it's direct service and sustainability, empowerment and edification, and policy and advocacy.
Nice.
So the way that and every single program that has been created through my personal experience. And so we have an organization that every single person who's in the organization has been impacted by incarceration, the staff of 8. And all of our consultants and contractors, because I believe that you have to be informed in order to do the work. What I heard you say before is if you've never been to prison, you need to go into a prison. And so when you're doing work around this, you need to actually live and do this work. And so we focus on women who are impacted by incarceration. What that means is whether you've lived in a prison like me, or you have a loved one that's lived in a prison, if you've had any kind of justice involvement or within the system, we help support you. So I see people writing like only women. Well, here's the thing, right? Like when men come home, they go home to who? Women. Right. Typically, they go home to my mama, grandma, auntie, girlfriend, wife, whoever, right? When women come home, they don't have the same thing. So for me, it's how do we support that woman who's at home to make sure that even the brother who might be coming home to them, that they're equipped in order to help, right, with that person in transition. So what we do is housing. We have a house in the Bronx for women who are coming home from prison. And we also just purchased our first home in New Orleans, Louisiana. We're bringing women in this week, thank God.
Wow, congratulations.
So thank you. I'm super excited about that. And that's been in 2 years. This is how God expedites things. We also have a food project called Angel Food Project, where we give out fresh bags of donations of food every single day. So we partner with Instacart.
Every day?
Every day, 7 days a week. We've been doing that for the last 5 years. We fed last year over 3,000 families, over 500 children. And that's through a partnership with Instacart. So Whole Foods, Fairway, Wegmans, Costco, many of the other markets, we also help to support them. Our edification and empowerment, we have a speakers bureau called the Faces of Women Imprisoned. And that trains women how to use their voice. One, to learn how to say no, because no is a complete sentence. And so often we don't know how to do that, which gets us in situations that does. The edification piece for me is that I could not do any of this without understanding my relationship to God. And so we lead with that. We offer, we partnered with, the Jewish Theological Seminary. We partnered with Buddhist and Kabbalah temples. We give people different ways so they can tap into who their power is. I'm a believer of God and Jesus Christ is my savior, so that's what I do. But also through Faces of Women in Prison, it's for women to understand what their value is as public speakers. And so we train them. We just had our first cohort. We're launching our Speakers Bureau on May 5th, which is my 5th year anniversary home. 5 is the number for grace.
That was also a question. I'm glad you hit on that. Someone had asked the question, how long have you been out? And they asked the question, are you on probation or parole, or what is your current status?
Yep, I'm gonna get to that. So
okay,
I've been home 5 years. And so right now, there's a, what's the name? Audre Lorde quote, while none of my sisters are free, I'm not free either, right? So, regardless of whether I'm on paper or not, I'm not free. That's why I do this work. And so through the Speakers Bureau, we make sure that women are getting paid to use their voice, because that's also a job, right? And outside of that, you should be compensated and understanding your value for your work. Then we also do our Pathways for Equity, which is partnering with different businesses. With Virgin Unite, we're tapping into 450 corporations around the country that will allow people to have second chance employment. We work right now with Caviar, Instacart, DoorDash, where we give people jobs now, but then building out that network. And then our policy and advocacy, we partner and work with New Yorkers United for Justice, with Cut 50 and other organizations where we've passed legislation, 15 pieces of legislation around the country for dignity for incarcerated women. I led that movement that was also led by women and girls who have been impacted by incarceration. And in New York, passing legislation and working with organizations and other people in a coalition that make sure that we can get our governor, which we're also going to talk about, to do a comprehensive legislation package to free people, but also to get rid of all these draconian sentences and laws that are way outdated, way antiquated. And so around my probation and parole, I was sentenced to 5 years post-release supervision. And my first, federally, there's a law, and most states are the same too. After you successfully complete your first year of supervision, you can file for what's called an early termination of sentence. Through one of our programs, Probation Accountability Project, we actually help people file early termination of sentences and tell people what their rights are while they're under surveillance. So through that, I filed, they denied me the first time without prejudice. So I went back a year later, filed again, and the judge saw all the work I was doing and said that he felt that supervision was impeding my work. And so I got an early termination of sentence in February of 2018. And he wrote an opinion. So therefore, people who are filing for early termination within the federal courts that do work similar to mine, they can use my case as a way to quote, to get early termination of sentence. So as I've shared here, all of this work has led me to my relationship as a surrogate and or ambassador for Represent Justice. As you said, it started with the Just Mercy movie, but has been a huge movement since then. We have some incredible voices of powerful people through this influential justice campaign that we're doing now. So everyone can tune in. I believe it's Tuesdays and Saturdays every week, so they can hear another person who's been impacted, to hear about their testimony, their story, and the work that they're doing. But during this time, specifically with COVID, there's so many things questions, but I feel like, you're asking me all the questions.
Because your story is interesting. I love your testimony. It's powerful. But listen, this is a dialogue. It's not a monologue. So whatever questions you may have for me, I'm happy to answer.
All right, good, because I have a few for you too.
Okay, good.
So one, I just want to say to you that, I honor you and I watch your work and I appreciate, even how you love and show love and reverence your wife. I'm a huge fan of hers too, but just to see how you love each other, that's just a beautiful thing. And I just hope many, many brothers take a page out of your mini books.
Thank you.
In order to do that. But I also know that, you have had some powerful women in your life, right? Who've helped to raise you and mold you into the great man that you are. So I think my question for you is, if any of those women would have been taken or kidnapped, as we say, from you and put into prison, how do you think that would have impacted your life?
Well, interestingly enough, one of those women actually did spend time in prison. Believe it or not. And, there were a lot of things that went into that particular, circumstance, a lot of false accusations and a really, a heartbreaking story. And I don't want to tell too much of it, only because I want her to be able to tell her story when she's ready. But it involved, some really, really close relationships in the family, and one particular close relationship that ended up, testifying against her. It was devastating. And so, for the majority of her life, had freedom. And then all of a sudden, later on in life, this incident happened. And so she spent time in prison in Southern California. And it was devastating. And that was really my firsthand experience with what it's like to have somebody that I love and who I depend on, who, you can't go the way you would like to go and visit all the time or talk on the phone all the time. And then you realize the amount of resources that are needed. Putting money on the books and offering notes and doing the things that we could do just to let her know, hey, we're with you, we're supporting you. And I can tell you, it was devastating. I mean, it's nothing that I would wish on anybody. And thankfully, that she's been out, and and she also very much like you, she has a heart for women and other women that have been through the incarceration experience. She the same way I feel like you do, like if you're dealing with women that have been incarcerated, you're tough because it's tough love. And she does the same thing with so many women saying, hey, girl, if you go do this, you're going to end up there, don't do, like, it really led to her ministry where, she doesn't have a formal ministry like yourself, but she does minister to so many. So I've seen it firsthand. It's like when and I say this because some people who are watching may not have had the experience. And a lot of times when you don't have the experience, you can be insensitive to it.
That's right.
So I just want to make sure anyone watching this right now that we break down that insensitivity so that you can be sensitive to what's going on, because those that are incarcerated now, especially women, the impact that it has on their lives, their families' lives, their children's lives, it's catastrophic. And so
that's right.
To your question, I have had that experience. And, I'm just grateful that she's out and, and still a tremendous part of my life. And that experience has helped propel her certainly to do even more to help as many women as she can never, experience the same fate.
Well, thank you so much for your transparency and sharing that. And, anything that I can do to help support her, please connect me to her. I would love that. And I know so often, as a woman, because of my lived experience, and I've visited men in prison. I have a brother who's presently going through a case right now, and it's devastating to see. And even having lived that and going back in and speaking to people, and ministering people and emailing people and doing all the work that we do, sending money into people because you understand the things that happen. But I implore everyone to understand, especially during this season. We just came through Resurrection Sunday, and this season that, those are our families. That's our community. We are all impacted by incarceration, every single one of us. And whether or not we understand, when you think about biblical sense, you say, we have to care about the least of them. And, I always say so often that, my incarceration, prison did not change me. It was the women that I met that changed me.
All right.
And so I know through that experience, I didn't have to go to prison to learn the things that I did. I feel like if I was sentenced to go to NA meetings or AA meetings 5 days a week, I would have been able to learn the same things that I learned.
Yeah.
But I know that my ministry wouldn't have been as powerful, because then I wouldn't have been able to say, wait a minute, I know what it is to be locked in a cell. I know what it is to be locked in a cell with 3 other people and have to use the bathroom, and everyone is on their cycle. And I'm getting a little graphic because people need to understand what that looks like and what that feels like. And then to think that now we have a global pandemic when mass incarceration has been a public health issue forever. People have been saying that. They're educators and people who have, many letters behind their name more than I. Have been talking about that for decades. And now that we have this global pandemic of COVID, now we're starting to look at it like that. And that's great. But in the end, what are we going to do to continue to push our people out, to stop them from going in, and to make sure when they do come out that there are more organizations like mine and others who are actually embracing our families and our people back into our community and into our churches? Because, that's a whole nother conversation that we could get into. That so often, people have prison ministries and they go in, but when they don't have a place when they come out. They don't have a place to go when they come out. And so, I think it's everyone, to my point earlier, we all can minister in the spirit. We all can minister to someone next to us. There's our ministry is our work and our relationship. And so we have to do that.
Which I think, I want to hit on that point to make sure we cover this, which is, first of all, for those of you that are watching, if you have somebody locked up, if you have someone incarcerated right now, if you know anyone, it could be a family member or a friend, go ahead and just type in the comments. Let us know. We want to, have a moment of solidarity. It could be someone in your family. It could be a friend. If you have someone incarcerated right now, just go ahead in the comments. We've already seen some people mention in the comments. We want to make sure in this moment that we are creating as much solidarity as possible. To the point of solidarity, I did see an interview that you have done, around this whole pandemic and this virus, about advocating for those that are incarcerated right now. And so can you just give us an update on, where you are in that process of advocating, for those that are incarcerated relative to their health, because we know that this virus, it thrives in close quarters. And there are no
Absolutely.
closer quarters than those that are living incarcerated. So talk to us about the work you're doing right now around the pandemic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for me, what we're doing here in the community, there's more people are losing jobs. I think unemployment is at an ultimate high. So every day we're getting more food out to communities and families. There's been a lot of emergency response funds, shout out to Good Films, Good Impact Films and Represent Justice for also
Yes.
supporting the Ladies of Hope Ministries in this COVID relief. And so we're making sure that people have tools, technology tools, right? How can they go to school online now that they can't go to school? You don't want to discourage people who have already been discouraged. You want to make sure that you're continuing to give them those opportunities, continue to move. So working with, on a national level, other organizations like Operation Restoration, like Reform Alliance, who did an incredible feat and brought hundreds of thousands through my brother Shaka Sangora, shout out to him,
Shaka. Yes.
partnering to get thousands and thousands of masks into the prisons in New York and a few other states, and Van Jones and Jessica Jackson and Erin, and they're doing incredible work over there at New Yorkers United for Justice. We're pushing our great state governor Cuomo to use his executive clemency power to release some people, because each state governor can use their power. It's not just the president of the United States. The president has the ability to do that over the 200,000 so odd people that are actually incarcerated right now in federal prison, which is where I was. But you have state, local, and county jails, which those jurisdictionally, sheriffs can release people, wardens can release people, governors have the ultimate executive clemency power to release people. And so what we've been asking and advocating for is that you release pregnant women, release people with aging people, men and women, aging people, people who have served substantial amount of time in their sentence, who have short periods left. I don't like to say violent and nonviolent, because 95% of all people will be coming home from prison. And so whether it's today or tomorrow, they're coming home, right? So how do we make sure that we're giving them the things that they need in order to do that? So it is incredibly important that we do not use that disparity. When you think about women specifically, and just to talk about violent, quote, violent crimes, violent people who are categorized violent, they have the less rate of recidivism than any other charge, right? It's more likely for me as a non-violent categorized person to have repeated something to come back than it is a person who had a violent charge, because they're typically isolated. A lot of times with women specifically, it's abuser violence. So someone harmed them, and then what happened was they tried to protect themselves and their children, and then that ended up in some harm. So therefore, that's why you look at violence different, because typically people who harm have been harmed, right? And so that's why they say people who heal have been healed themselves. So, there are ways that we need to look and approach this work. So I think ultimately right now what needs to happen is that each person, Represent Justice is coming up with a great tool. So to go on, there'll be a link in the bio to go on, and it will automatically allow for us to get in contact with our state governors and sheriffs, which has never been done before. So
and I'm
this
glad
is
you're
actually
speaking on
game-changing.
this, because that was my next question, which is, what can we as a community do to help our brothers and sisters right now that are incarcerated? So please give us the tips and tools for someone watching right now that's being motivated. What can they do, or what's the one powerful thing they can do in order to be in solidarity and support for our brothers and sisters incarcerated?
I'll give a few. So the first thing is reach out. Like I said, go to Represent Justice, go to the tool, reach out to your state governor, your sheriff, local sheriff, and demand that they begin to release people from prison, period. Number two, reach out to your loved one. 1 in 3 adults has been impacted by incarceration, which means a third of the people on here have had someone they love who's been in prison. You probably forgot about them. Maybe you're angry at them or disappointed. Right now, they need you. Right now, we're not allowed to talk on the phone, because in Dublin, California, right now, I was talking to Michelle West, who I talked about, Michelle West, who they come out twice a week Tuesdays and I believe Saturdays or Fridays to have 15 minutes to take a shower, make a phone call, do email, whatever. These are 3 women in a cell that get out twice a week to take a shower, right? Think about what I said earlier. And women who are on here, you know, when you're around your girls a lot, y'all all come on your cycle at the same time. So think about being in a cell with 3 other women and only get out twice a week to take a shower twice. Just think about that, right? Also think about how we can do letter writing programs. You know, how you can call the prison and do a prison visitor program, how you can invest in community-based organizations like the Ladies of Hope Ministries and other great organizations that are out there doing the work. I saw, I think Gretel say that it's representjustice.com or .org/action. Find the tool to go on in order to get in contact with your governor and or sheriff. So, you know, if I can, and I know, I just want to call out a few names of people that I work with and support who are presently in prison, who have been incarcerated for decades upon decades, who fit the criteria of being released from prison, as far as I'm concerned, should have been. I said Michelle West, I say Bernetta Willis, I say Lenore Logan, I say Gloria Taylor, I say, William Underwood, I say Deion Williams, I say, oh Lord, so many people.
Yeah.
That Candace Williams. These are people who are both in state and federal prisons. These are people, Dr. Matulu Shakur. These are people who have been incarcerated for so long, who are sick, who have been in 20, 30, 40 years, who need to be home from prison. So as we lift our people's voices, we know that when 2 or 3 are gathered, God is in the midst of them. Let's raise those voices. I want to see names in here of people who can start to say the names of your loved ones, so that we can begin to praise them and get them out. Let's just pray them out of these prisons and jails, because we need to get our people home. These are cages that people are in.
Amen.
And I try to just be as graphic as possible, but also being as considerate and understanding, because like you said, so many people haven't had the ability to go and visit a loved one or even to live in one themselves. And because of the shame and guilt, people are still not talking about it because of the stigmas. But we have so many of our children who are parentless right now. And because they're not going to school, it leaves them vulnerable, right? So we have to embrace our community and re-embrace our children and do the things that our grandparents and our great-grandparents did for us.
You know, I agree with that. I mean, it takes a community effort, and we have to have that idea that we're in this together. And I love that. And one of the other ways that people, if you're watching right now and you really want to support, you can donate. You can give to representjustice.org / DeVon Franklin. You can go ahead. I have a specific link that I put out here because I'm supporting the cause. I'm going to be matching up to $2,500. So if you donate, I'll be matching up to $2,500. The first 10 people that donate, you'll get a Represent Justice hoodie. You see, it looks good. You know,
that's dope. I didn't even get mine yet.
You can still, look good and represent justice at the same time. Right. So go ahead and donate, representjustice.org / DeVon Franklin. Again, I'm committed to this cause. I'll be matching up to $2,500 of donations, and the first 10 will get a hoodie. And this money goes specifically to helping those incarcerated right now get the help that they need, the advocacy that Represent Justice, is representing and for. I know that our time, Topeka, I could talk to you all day. I could talk to you all night. Before we end right now, I just want you just give us just 60 seconds. There's someone watching right now, and they need your inspiration. They need a word from you. They are in a situation, because what I love about what you're saying is that no matter what the situation is, you can change, you can be transformed, you can operate in purpose. So there's someone that's stuck and they need to get unstuck. Just give us 60 seconds on what you would say to someone stuck and how to get them unstuck right now.
Absolutely. So what I would say is that the word says that there's no perfect man, not even one. And that we do know that we can do all things through Christ that strengthens us.
Yes.
There's nothing too hard for the Lord. Nothing. And I just share those three words because those are the things that led me through my 3 years, has helped me through my last 5 years, and will continue to help me in the next 5, 10, hopefully 50. What I do know is that there is no shame and guilt in forgiveness. We have to forgive ourselves first before we can ask anyone else for forgiveness, right? Forgive yourself for anything that you've done, the harm that you've caused others or the harm that someone has caused you. Because in the end, it's not for them, it's for you. Once you've gone through the process of forgiving yourself, ask God for forgiveness or your higher power or whoever it is that you reverence.
Mm-hmm.
Ask for forgiveness and know that it is given. Once you understand that you've forgiven yourself and that God has forgiven you, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. You know, what's been helpful for me is that I decided when I came home that I was going to move in front of my own narrative. I was going to tell my own story and I was going to live in my own truth and not let whatever was on Google or what other people had to say define who I was.
Amen.
And so because of that, you don't have to live in shame and guilt. I know that I was incarcerated for 3 years. I've made many, many poor choices, bad decisions, and mistakes in my life. But I do know that as a woman of God, that all of those things has molded and shaped me into